another building in public project update. We're talking about the We Should Watch application, which is a application to make groups, be a part of those groups, add movies, TV shows that you want to watch with friends, family, significant others, mainly for my girlfriend and I to keep track of movies outside of a Google document. So we're going to be looking at today some front-end stuff. Last time was more back-end focused. We'll start with these little movie card buttons that we got here, movie poster buttons, where this was going to have a title, but now it won't. It's mainly just going to be the image. We click on the image, and we get this modal pop-up. Forgive the lines. I was messing around with CSS and trying to figure out all of my positioning. But we have this modal pop-up where you can add to list or go to a details page, and we see the information here. So let's start with that. You can see over here right now I've got our poster button component and the preview card component inside of that as a child. So if we look at the way this is working out, I'm populating this right now. I've just got a bogus movie info object here up at the top. This is the information we're going to receive on an initial API call. We'll do an actual API call later, but this is the kind of stuff we're going to get back. And this is what this looks like. So here's our button. We click the button. We get the pop-up. I don't like the way this looks right now. I'll probably mess around with designs. I don't even have a color scheme yet, but we've got our image. We've got our title. We've got a year. We've got a rating. We map through some genres, which actually come through as an array of numbers. I'll show how I change that in a minute. We've got a description of the movie that we actually chop down, which we'll look at too. And we've got some buttons that are going to do some stuff in the future. So if we go, let's first look at the preview card here. And here's our component, where actually, if you notice, Typescript is yelling at me here, primarily because this is expecting more props than I'm passing in. And the reason for that is the movie database handles movies and TV shows differently. Let's actually look at my types that I've got over here under my interface file. I've got interface media, which is all of the properties that the TV shows and movie objects they have in common. It's all this stuff, at least for our initial call. I'll probably have to change some of this later. And then I've got a movie, which extends media, and TV, which extends media, and that has the individual properties that they don't share. But like title and name, those are the same thing. I don't know why they handle them differently, but whatever, we're dealing with it. So if we look at preview card, here's a bunch of the props that we're passing in by spreading that object, and we expect either movie or TV, right? So TypeScript knows I don't have both title and name here, but we're handling that. Right now, we're just using this to get the poster, the image, release year. We are using a ternary operator to say if we have release date, then use that and trim it down to just the year. Otherwise, use first air date. Media title, same thing. If we have title, ternary operator, use that. Otherwise, use name. Rating actually comes through as like 7.345 or something like that. Just dropping that down to a single decimal point at the 10th place. And in description, we're actually calling this function down here, description, overview, where we pass in the overview, which is a string. So we call it text, and we split it into an array. If that array has less than 20 elements to it, less than 20 words, we're just going to return the original string back. Otherwise, we're going to chop it down and return it with an ellipsis at the end. Nothing too crazy, just to stop this thing from getting gigantic. And then we have our genres, which genres we actually declared here, so I can just do this here and just say, oh, just pop genres right here, right? Rather than having all this stuff in my return. We map through each of the genres. They're each a number. So I've got this find genre function that's actually in a different utility file over here. Find genre, where here are all the different genre numbers and names that we can have. We receive a name. We pass it in here. We just return we pass the number and we return the name back. Nothing too crazy, right? We're just pulling it from an object and returning back our match. So that's preview card, nothing too wild. And what we really want to look at, which is more fun, let's go look at the poster button. Here's our poster button, getting the same kind of thing, right? From TypeScript because we expect movie or TV. This time we also have PropsWithChildren because we do have a child between our opening and closing brackets there. We have child visible up front, which is set to false. That's going to tell us if we have this child is visible or not, right, based on a button click. We do the same thing with media title, ternary operator. Here's our handle click. We'll look at that in just a second. I declare the modal up top here, which is just a div that we're giving a role as backdrop. And all this div is, it's just a fixed position, full screen container, flexbox container that just centers whatever element we put as a child element. And here is the children that we're passing in, that child. So we see that gets centered. And then if children, we'll look at the if not children in a little bit. If children, we return a button. Here is our ternary operator where we say if child is visible, return the modal. If not, nothing, right? And I've actually got in the handle click, which we call if we click that button, I've got this if statement up top, this conditional to check to see if target.alt is media title, because we're going to click on this button or this image really, and you're either going to see you're clicking on that image or we're clicking on the backdrop, eTarget.role, to dismiss that modal. And the reason I have that set up is because we've got these two buttons here. They're going to do something in the future. They don't do anything right now. But if I didn't have that conditional, clicking on either one of these buttons would bubble that action up, right, to its parent element. And we would then dismiss that modal and call that on click. So we avoid that. Now this other one, Eric, why do we have this if there's no children? Well, the other thing we want to look at today is this kind of landing page that has trending movies, trending shows, and trending actors. This I envisioned as like a sliding element, right? Which just, this whole thing was supposed to be just a phone application in the beginning. We'll see if I extend this out to full screen views and stuff, but I wanted that sliding motion. It feels nice, it looks nice, it's a very cool feature. So I was using Swiper.js to handle that for me. And let's look at those trending. So we'll just uncomment this and reload our page. We can see we get a quick loading state here, nothing too fancy. I'll handle that differently later, I think. And we get our images and they slide, and that's super cool, right? This actor component, it's very similar to the button we just looked at. It's called actor link. It expects a person type that I had, and it just is a link back out to media type /ID, which if we hover, you can see /person/ID. Nothing too fancy there. But this image now is also the same thing. If you hover, you can see /TV/ID, /movie/ID. So if we go back to our poster button, that's that other conditional there, right? If there's no children passed in here, then instead of returning this button that does some stuff, I'm just returning a link, really. You can see here in index, right? I've got this one that has a child to it, but if we go look at trending, down here, no children, right? And I'll talk about the reason for that in a minute, but let's actually look at the trending file. So here we've got props that we've typed out where we're expecting movie or person or TV. And you can see that as well on index here. We've got trending, media type, movie, TV, person. We return some different stuff in each case. We have data that we're setting, data for this particular trending, this instance of trending, which is going to be either an array of movie or TV or person type, or nothing. We have a loading state that's set to true initially, and we've got these breakpoints here, which is just an object of different breakpoints. It's what Swiper.js uses, so we can have this thing look nice when we do some resizing, versus it just having one static look to it. We make a useEffect call where we call this getData function. In getData, it's an async function where we pass in the media type, which we looked at before is either movie, person, or TV. That's our prop. And we pass this back with we'll make an Axios get call to my API, movie database /trending, where we pass the params media type. We get whatever data, we set the data, we set loading to false. Console logging stuff is testing, but actually I don't remember if I went over them specifically in the backend video, but I had 3 individual files to get this trending data, 1 for movie, 1 for people, and 1 for TV shows. The only difference really was this URL and that media type here. So rather than having 1 file for each, which is insane, I'm now just passing the params back and using that as a variable to set what URL we're going to call out to. So we call it to the appropriate URL with my my API access key, which is being pulled from an environment file right now, and we pass that data back up. So within trending now, well, you can see within trending we have if we're loading is true, then we return this loading state, which again is just temporary, I guess. This if there's no data found. Media type person, here's our swiper container, and we just map through the array of objects that we get back from the API call. And for each instance of that, each object in that array, we put swiper slide, which is how swiper handles all this stuff. And we put the actor link. If it's not person, then we return the same kind of thing, but instead we're mapping through either an array of movie data or TV data. So we're just passing in PosterButton, which now brings us back to whether we have a child or not on that PosterButton component. Let's look together at this swiper container, and we can see here we've got transform, translate 3D. And as I slide this back and forth, that number changes, right? That's how swiper is handling this movement with transform, translate. What I learned is that anytime you use transform, translate 3D, any child element that uses a fixed positioning is basically broken. Rather than this fixed positioning working the way you would expect it to work, it actually aligns itself with that parent component. So let's actually take a look at what I mean here. So now rather than this poster button just being on its own, let's actually put in my preview card. Here we go. So now I've got the actual child here. So we're returning a different element here, right? We're returning the button. And if I click, now you can see that background, besides it getting cut off by the other container, it's aligning itself with the parent element, which is not what I wanted. I took a look through a lot of things online to try to find a solution to this, and I couldn't find anything. From what I can tell, this is just the agreed upon behavior of how this is supposed to work. So I don't think there's a way around it. So rather than try to deal with it and struggle and get frustrated, I'm just making those things anytime I have a swiping component, it's just gonna link right out to the full media detail page, which I haven't set up yet, but will soon. I don't know. This is working fairly well so far. This has been fun to put together. Nothing too crazy yet so far, but I'm happy with better component composition in general and avoiding having to do a lot of prop drilling. And so far, it's just a fun little passion project. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.